Okay, hi everyone. This is going to be a very quick review video of the Mishnayot in Perek Aleph of Masachet Brachot, which is what our first Bikiyut quiz is going to be on. Okay, so the first Mishnah is actually pretty easy because we actually learned it together in class. I'll read through it quickly, but hopefully we're a little bit more familiar with it. And on the next slide, you'll see I put the English translation from Sefaria. Definitely here encourage you to use English translation, Sefaria, Merkava, to help you prepare. Though again, on the quiz, you'll only have the Hebrew of the Mishnah, though you can also bring in an index card. Okay, so let's begin. So the first Mishnah starts off, from when can I start saying Shema in Arvit? There's really only one answer to this question of when you can start saying Shema at night, and that is from when the time the Kohanim go to eat truma, meaning from the time that the Tamei Kohanim can go to the mikvah, and then nightfall begins, and that's when they're allowed to eat truma. So meaning kind of a fancy way of saying night, but it's when the Kohanim can start to eat their truma. But now what's interesting is the Mishnah lists three opinions to answer a different question, which is, when do I have to stop saying Shema? What's the deadline? So the first option, ad sofa ashmura harishona, right? You have to stop saying it. You have until the end of the first watch. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, that is Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Opinion number two, Chachamim amrim ad chatzot. The Chachamim say you have until midnight. And three, Rabban Gamliel omer ad she'aleh amud hashachar. Rabban Gamliel says you have until dawn of the next day. So again, here I think what's interesting, or what's important to really distinguish between, is there's that question first, and we even kind of highlighted in different colors. Here we go. Let's see if this works. Our question first is kind of from where, or from when do you start, right? We're asking kind of from when do you start? When can I start saying Shema at night? And there's really only one answer to that question. When can I start? When the Kohanim go to eat their truma, meaning at night. But then, I'm using just random colors here, not Komdat or what we do in Gemara class. But then, there's three answers to another question, right? We have, and that question's, well, when do I have to stop? And that's, you have until the first watch. The rabbis say you have until Chatzot. Rabban Gamliel says until midnight. And we can write over here, right? These are really coming to answer what exactly is, I'm writing out here, deadline for Shema. So just to make sure to note, if I ask you, how many answers are there to the question of when can I start saying Shema at night, really only one answer to that question. How many answers are there to the question of when do I have to stop? We have three. Okay. Anyways, the Mishnah that went on with that story that we talked about in class, right? Ma'aseh, Shabau Banav Mi Beit HaMishteh, Rabban Gamliel's sons come home late from a party, Amru Lo Karinu et HaShema. And they say, oh, we got home late and we haven't said Shema yet. Amar Lahem, he tells his sons, Im lo ala amud hashachar, chayvina tem lekrot. If the sun still hasn't gone up, if it's not dawn, you actually are obligated to still read Shema, which it goes along with his opinion, right? He says you have until amud hashachar. Velozo bilvad, kol ma she'amru chachamim chatzot mitzvatan ad she'aleh amud hashachar. And not just this, but I'm not the only guy who says you have until amud hashachar. Anytime the rabbis said you had a deadline of chatzot, which I did here, really you have until Amud HaShachar. Then he gives two proofs, or two other cases involving korbanot, where also the rabbi said you had until midnight, but they really meant chatzot, right? Hekter chalavim ve'evarim, the burning of the fats and limbs of the mizbeach, mitzvatan ad she'aleh Amud HaShachar. You really have till dawn, even though Chachamim had said midnight. V'kol nechalim le'yom achad, any korbanot that you have to eat in one day, mitzvatan ad she'aleh Amud HaShachar. You really have until dawn to eat them, even though the rabbi said midnight. And finally, im ken lama amru chachamim chatzot. So if the rabbis really meant you have until dawn, why did they say chatzot? Kedei laharchik et ha'adam min haveira, to distance people from sin, so you don't leave things last minute and miss them. Okay, and over here I just kind of put the English translation of that Mishnah from Sefaria. Sefaria here likes to give a lot of background information. It's not super needed. You don't have to know all of the background information. I just kind of gave the general translation, but it can be helpful here just to read the basic bolds is like the English translation, if that's helpful for you. Okay, Mishnah 2, here we go. So the Mishnah before asked, when can you start reading Shema at night? And now Mishnah number 2 over here, is going to ask, when can I start reading Shema during the day. We know we have to say Shema twice, during the night, during the day. When can I start saying? How early in the morning can I start saying Shema? Think about if you're getting up for an early flight, right? When exactly is it too early to say Shema? So our first opinion is anonymous, which means it is from the Tana Kama, right? Write that out over here. Tana Kama is what we call an anonymous rabbi in the Mishnah. I know some of you are familiar with this, some of you aren't. An anonymous rabbi in the Mishnah who gives an opinion and we don't know his name. So here's our first answer to the question. So we'll start reading. When can I start saying Shema at Shacharit? Here's my first answer from the Tana Kama, the anonymous person. Mishiyakir ben tchel lavan. When I go outside and I can distinguish between tchelet, think about the blue on tzitzis, kind of like a turquoise blue, lulavan, to white. So think about, times maybe you stayed up all night, maybe Shavuot, maybe last night at camp, and the sunrise is coming up. And this is like when it's still dark outside, but it's starting a little bit to get light. So in this case, it's saying again, how light is it? Can you distinguish between colors? So the Tana Kama says, when can you read it? When is it considered day? When I can see the difference between tchelet and white, kind of in the sky and what's going on. That's opinion number one. But then Rabbi Eliezer comes and says, no, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, bein tchelet lekarti. Karti is kind of like green. And he says, no, it's not when you can distinguish between blue and white, but when you can distinguish between the blue and green streaks in the sky. When those are kind of clear enough, then you can say, oh, that's blue and that's green. Then it's light enough, and you can say Shema. And here, he actually, going back to what we said before, we were asking about when you can start, he actually adds it over here an ending, which we didn't have before. V'gomra ad hanetzachama. And you actually have to finish saying Shema by sunrise. We don't paskin this way, right? We say you can say Shema much later on in the morning, but he says you can start when you can distinguish between blue and green, but you have to finish it by sunrise. Rabbi Yeshua comes, and he actually only talks about the deadline, and he says, Rabbi Yeshua Omer ad shalosh shaot. No, you actually have to finish by 3 hours into the day. These are 3 halachic hours. We're not going to really get into that, but kind of like 3 hours into the morning. Why 3 hours? Sheken derech bnei melachim la'amod b'shalosh shaot. Because kings, regular kings in the secular world, would kind of get up at 3 hours of the day. I guess if we're thinking kind of, we're talking to God, who's a king, when would be kind of an appropriate time. So again, the kings kind of get up after 3 hours, so you have until those 3 hours to say Shema. That's interesting, kind of interesting question. Well, what if I missed the deadline totally in all these takes? If I missed all of the deadlines, like I forgot to say Shema, and now it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon, can I still say Shema? And the Mishnah is going to say, yeah, you can still say Shema. You don't get davening points, but since Shema is psukim from the Torah, you get points for reading the Torah. So here at Koreh Mikan Ve'elech, if you read from then on, like after those 3 hours, later on in the morning, when it's too late, lo yifsid, you didn't really lose anything. Ke adam hakoreh b'Torah. It's like you're reading Torah. You get points for learning Torah, even if it's not kind of davening points. Here I made like a fun chart to kind of just make sure that Mishnah made sense, right? We have 2 questions. When can you start saying Shema in the morning? And what's my deadline? Tana Kama talks about when you can start. Rabbi Eliezer gives 2 opinions, right? You can start when you can see the difference between green and blue. And he gives a deadline of sunrise. Rabbi Yeshua only gives a deadline. Says you have until 3 hours of a day, because that's when the kings would get up. Okay, let's keep going. This is Mishnah number 3. Here we go. Mishnah number 3 here talks about the fact that we know our source for saying Shema is b'shafecha ubekumecha, when you lie down and when you get up. Kind of here, just highlight over here, when you lie down and when you get up. And Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel had an argument really over how literally do we take this. Does b'shafecha ubekumecha, I have to say Shema when I lie down and when I get up, mean just at times, like say it at the time when you lie down and when you get up? Or is it literally talking about how I have to physically read them? That b'shafecha, when I lie down, means at night I actually have to read Shema physically lying down on a bed, or I guess, I don't know, like a couch or the floor, and reading Shema in the morning. Bekumecha means I physically have to stand for Shema. And that's a debate between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. So let's read through this together, and I also made a fun chart for it. So, Beit Shammai says, Be'erev kol adam yitu v'yikru, u'bavoker yamdu, Shenemar b'shafecha bekumecha. Beit Shammai says at night, when you say Shema, you should recline, lie down, and read it. And in the morning, you should stand up, because literally the pasuk says when you lie down and when you get up, and that's what you have to do physically. Beit Hillel omrim. Beit Hillel says no, it's not. Beit Hillel is going to say here it's not true. Kol adam korek kedarko. No, you can say Shema however you want, sitting down, lying down, standing up, do whatever you want for Shema. Shenemar, as it says also in the passage about Shema, b'latacha b'derech, as you go on your way, kind of implying that say Shema, whatever works for you. So now we have a question on Beit Hillel. Im ken, if so, lama ne'emar u'b'shafecha b'kumecha. If so, why does the Torah say literally when you lie down and when you get up? Beit Hillel is not taking it literally. So what would Beit Hillel do with this pasuk? How do they explain the fact that the pasuk seems to say when you lie down and when you get up? Doesn't this mean I should say it lying down and standing up? No. The way that Beit Hillel views this pasuk is, it means generally, what does it mean when you lie down? It means say Shema at the time when people are lying down, meaning nighttime. What's bekumecha mean? Say Shema when you get up, meaning at the time when people get up. Not about how you're physically standing or sitting. And then tells us a little bit of a story at the end. Amar Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon says, Ani hayiti baba derech. I was, on a trip, but he teiti likrot, and I actually lied down to say Shema kedivrei Beit Shammai, to follow the opinion of Beit Shammai. V'sikanti be'atzmi v'nei halistim. I actually endangered myself because of robbers. I guess there were like robbers on the way. Maybe he was lying down and he couldn't it was hard for him to hide, and just put himself in a little bit of a dangerous situation. Amrulo, and the other rabbis told him, Kedai hayita lacho be'atzmecha shevar shal divrei Beit Hillel. It's a little bit of a harsh statement here by the rabbis. They're basically like, you kind of deserve that to happen to you, that your life became in danger because of these robbers, because you weren't holding by Beit Hillel. And overwhelmingly, we always hold by Beit Hillel over Beit Shammai. They're saying, what were you doing lying down, in your carriage on your trip to say Shema? We don't hold by Beit Shammai. You could have said it standing, sitting, however you wanted, and, you kind of deserved the dangerous situation you put yourself into. Probably a lot more to unpack, but not for the time that we have here. And here again is a fun chart over here. So what is learned from the pasuk of b'shafcha b'kumecha, when you lie down, when you get up? Beit Hillel views it as the time you say Shema, around the time people go to sleep, around the time people get up. Beit Shammai views it as how to physically say Shema. Literally b'shafcha, say it lying down at night. Literally b'kumecha, say it standing up during the day. And here's the question: do you stand or sit for Shema? Beit Hillel says do whatever you want, right? B'latacha b'derech, whatever works for you. Beit Shammai's like, nope. Night you lie down, and day you stand up, and we paskin like Beit Hillel. Okay, here we go, our second last Mishnah, Mishnah 4. And this is actually the Mishnah that was quoted in our Gemara as that challenge, right? The one found on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, that here it actually teaches day before night. So hopefully this will be a little bit familiar to us, because it talks about the Birchot Kriyat Shema, the brachas of Kriyat Shema, which surround Kriyat Shema. We know there's 2 before and 1 after during the day, 2 before and 2 after at night. So let's read about it together. Then it gives us some rules about brachot. Okay. B'shachar mevarach shtayim. B'shachar mevarach shtayim lefanecha ve'echat la'acharecha. In the morning for shacharit, talking about Shema here, you say 2 brachot before Shema and 1 bracha after Shema. Uba'erev, and at night at tfilat arvit, shtayim lefaneha u'shtayim la'acharecha. At night you say 2 birchot kriyat Shema before and 2 after. Echat aruka ve'echat ktsara. So here is a lot of different commentaries on how to explain this one line. Sfira goes in a whole tangent. You don't have to know it. It's fine. I think the simplest way of understanding this is there's 2 brachot that are after Shema at night, right? Shtayim la'acharecha, echad arucha, v'echad ktsara. One of them is long, one of them is short. You look at your siddur, emet v'yatziv, right? That happens right after Shema emet v'emuna, the one at night, is very long. And hashkivenu is kind of short. So you have 2 brachot after Kriyat Shema at night. One is long and one is short. And now it kind of tells us that we have to follow the kind of tefillot the rabbis put in the siddur, and we can't just decide, this bracha is too long, I'm just going to shorten it, or this bracha is a little too short, I'm going to lengthen it, right? Makom shamru laharich, in the place where the rabbis told us to have a long bracha to extend our davening, right? A longer bracha. Eino rashai lekatzer. You're not allowed to shorten it. You can't shorten the bracha just because you think it's too long. And lekatzer, And if it's a very short bracha and you're like, why are they skimping on this bracha? Let's add in more words. Ino rashai laharich. You're not allowed to lengthen it. So basically pretty simple. Do what the rabbis say for davening. Don't shorten things or lengthen things. Just do kind of what they put out. At the end, it talks about something called a chatima. A chatima in a bracha is when a bracha ends, repeating the words Baruch Atah Hashem. So for example, think about something we say in Berchot Tefillah in the morning. We say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Here comes the chatima, and we end with Baruch Atah Hashem Noten HaTorah. So whenever a bracha ends with Baruch Atah Hashem again, that's a signature, quote unquote, or a chatima. So what does it say over here? Lachtom, if a bracha ends with a chatima, if it ends with a Baruch Atah Hashem, Eino rashai shelo lachtom. You can't just kind of decide, with this bracha, I'm dropping the ending. Can't do that. V'shelo lachtom, and if a bracha doesn't have a chatima, like I'm drinking some tea now, where I said Baruch Atah Hashem shakol niyeh b'dvaro, I didn't add in any chatima going on there. I didn't add another bracha, at the end. Eino rashai lachtom. I can't just decide to add one. So again, it's talking about the brachas of Kriyat Shema, and then it just adds in those rules of if the bracha is long, don't make it short. If it's short, don't make it long. If it has a signature, great, don't take it off. If it doesn't have a signature, don't add one. Okay, cool. And finally, our final Mishnah, which is also said at the Pesach Seder. Super exciting. So this Mishnah talks about the kind of halakha that you're supposed to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim, coming out of Egypt. And we have a pasuk in the Torah that tells us you're supposed to remember it at night. But what's interesting about this pasuk is it has an extra word. We'll put our Tanakh hats on for a second. The pasuk over here is Laman Tizkor et Yom Tzidcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim Kol Yemei Chayecha. That you should remember the day you left Egypt, Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life. And the whole thing that's going on in this Mishnah, putting our Tanakh hats on for a minute, is really you don't need the word kol, right? I don't need to say you should remember leaving Egypt all the days of your life. I could just say remember leaving Egypt for the days of your life. So the fact that we have this extra word, or this word that's a little bit unnecessary of kol, is going to lead the rabbis in the Mishnah to debate, maybe this extra word is here to teach us something. So here we go. Let's talk about this, and it's really talking about when exactly do I have to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay, so it starts off with a din. Mazkirin Yetziat Mitzrayim b'leilot. We remember leaving Egypt at night. Like in Shema, in Mar, remember at night. Rav Elazar ben Azariah says, Harei ani kiven 70 shana. I am like a 70-year-old man. You might be familiar, right, with the Gemara that talks about this, that he was appointed Rosh Hashiva when he was very young, and his beard went white. It's a great story. Maybe we'll reference it another time. So, Harei ani kiven 70 shana. I'm like, and until I was 70 years old, or maybe until I looked 70, but until I was 70 years old, V'lo zachiti shetemar Yetziat Mitzrayim b'leilot. And I never really merited to understand or to hear proofs about why you have to say or remember Yetziat Mitzrayim at night. That I was like a 70-year-old man, and I had never heard a good reason or a good proof for why we have to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim at night. Shah ben Zoma, until another rabbi in the Mishnah called Ben Zoma came forward with the following line. Shneimar, and he takes this pasuk, which we just said before, Laman tizkor ad yom tzidcha me'eretz Mitzrayim kol yemei chayecha, that you should remember leaving Egypt all the days of your life. And he says, Yemei chayecha, I put these in quotation marks, the days of your life. What do I learn from the days of your life? That I have to remember leaving Egypt during the day. Kol yemei chayecha, now that I have this extra word kol, all the days of your life, what do I learn out from that extra word of all the days of your life, or all? Halilot, that it's not just days I have to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim, but even nights. That's what Ben Zoma says. And the Chachamim come and they actually also say that, this word kol is coming to add something new, but it's not really about days versus nights. It's about kind of this world and the world to come. Chachamim amrim yemei chayecha ha'olam hazeh, right? When it says you have to remember the days of your life, that means we have to remember that we left Egypt in this world, right, in this lifetime. Kol yemei chayecha, when it says all the days of your life, it means lahavi limot HaMashiach, to include the days of Mashiach. That even when Mashiach comes, we still will have to continue remembering Yetziat Mitzrayim. I guess you could think when Mashiach comes, won't that be such a tremendous redemption that it'll overshadow us leaving Egypt and maybe we don't have to remember it anymore? But no, you're still going to have to remember leaving Egypt and reference it and kind of, give gratitude for it even once it's a time of Mashiach. Okay, and finally, I made kind of a helpful chart here, right? The Lamantis courage, you can see how Mitzrayim kol yemei chayecha. You should remember leaving Egypt all the days of your life. When do we have to remember leaving Egypt, right? And we have these two words, yemei chayecha, the days, and kol yemei chayecha, all the days. Ben Zoma says yemei chayecha teaches us you have to remember it during the day, and kol yemei chayecha is the night. So also I have to remember leaving Egypt at night. Chacham say yemei chayecha is this world, olam hazeh, and kol yemei chayecha is Olam Haba. Congratulations, you have finished learning Mishnayot Perek 1 of Masechet Brachot.